fact that the Grand Chiefs and the Vice Chief are here is a powerful statement that the police rely on cooperation with the community.
Tonight, police say 17 children in a northern Manitoba First Nation were victims of sexual assault in the last 2 years.
The current system is clearly inadequate and is failing to meet the needs of Nunavut's children and youth.
A failing grade. A report looking at mental health services for kids in Nunavut shows they're not getting the help they need.
We're not criminals, so we're driven by our heart and not by greed or money or other motivation.
And Labrador land protectors are in court again for protesting the Muskrat Falls Hydro project.
Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Melissa Ridgen. The RCMP have laid charges against 2 people in a child sexual and physical abuse investigation that has rocked a northern Manitoba First Nation. Police say they have identified 17 young victims on the Garden Hill First Nation, but as Brittany Hobson tells us, police are concerned there may be more.
The child sexual and physical abuse investigation we'll be speaking about today is a tragedy that has and will deeply affect the community of Garden Hill.
Between December 2017 and June 2018, police received 3 reports of alleged child sexual assaults in Garden Hill First Nation. Following an 11-month investigation, RCMP have charged 3 individuals relating to abuses in the community.
A total of 17 children, both male and female, ranging from 3 to 15 years of age at the time of the incidents, were identified as victims of sexual and/or physical abuse.
Paul Bruce Harper has been charged with multiple sexual offenses. Police say more than 150 children were identified as having contact with Harper.
During the course of the investigation into the 3 reported sexual assaults, it was learned that this accused had access to a residence that was a foster home for numerous children in the community.
One of the others charged was the foster mother of the home. Police were able to determine the alleged offenses took place between 2011 and 2017. Michael Kopang, a superintendent with the RCMP, credits the community with supporting the investigation.
As I said earlier, the fact that the Grand Chiefs and the Vice Chief are here is a powerful statement that the police rely on cooperation with the community.
Garrison Satie, who is Grand Chief for the Northern First Nations, says support is essential for survivors, and all levels of government must work together.
We work on the same level to ensure that the victims are looked after and that they're protected from future harm.
Families Minister Heather Stephenson calls the allegations horrific, but wouldn't commit to anything because the investigation is ongoing.
We need to allow the investigative process to take place. I certainly think it would be inappropriate for myself or anyone to intervene in that process. So we'll continue to let that process take place and, one step at a time.
RCMP are urging other potential victims to come forward. Brittany Hobson, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
$116 million is the amount that Kitigan-Zibi was granted for multiple land claims, but not everyone from the Quebec First Nation will see that money. APTN's Amber Bernard explains.
There are around 1,600 people living in Kitigan-Zibi, including Kylie. She lives here with her mom and dad, but Kylie is the only one in her family who will not receive a portion of Kitigan-Zibi's land claim money.
She's been excluded because she didn't get her registration papers in time. We didn't even know that there was a deadline for it. We thought that all the babies born before the vote would be included.
The community voted to close off money to new band members after January 5th of this year. Kylie was born 4 months before that, and her mom submitted her registration papers last November. But Ojik says her baby wasn't approved until January 24th of this year. Kylie is one of 8 babies born before the deadline, left out of the settlement.
She was born before the due date, and just because of administrative errors or whatever it is, she's being cut out, and it's kind of like not fair.
The babies were basically thrown under the bus. They should have been priority, and they were put on the back burner while 200 S3s were made priority.
Ojik is talking about new band members under Bill S3, which gives status to children of mothers who married non-Indigenous men.
These 8 babies are from this community. Their parents are registered band members. Nobody knows who these 200 S3s are. They never even set foot on this reserve.
Kylie's parents asked the Kitigan-Zibi Band Council to backdate the babies' memberships to their birth dates, but say they haven't received formal support. APTN reached out to Kitigan-Zibi Council for comment, and they said, as a S11 band under the Indian Act, it is the registrar that controls the registration of Kitigan-Zibi's Anishinaabes membership. This means Indigenous Services Canada is ultimately responsible for band registration.
We reached out to Indigenous Crown Services, and they said Section 11 bands like Kitigan-Zibi are responsible for Indian status registration, but it's ultimately up to the government to process them, which could take anywhere from 6 to 8 months.
It feels like my daughter's getting discriminated against, and I'm feeling a bit discriminated too.
Amber Bernard, APTN National News, Kitigan-Zibi.
Nunavut's child and youth advocate has released a report about mental health services for Nunavut kids, and the picture it paints is frightening. Here's Kent Driscoll from Iqaluit.
Nunavut's representative for children and youth has released their first ever report to the Legislative Assembly. It's focused on mental health services for young Nunavummiut, and according to them, youth are not getting what they need.
While there are many positive initiatives and dedicated individuals working to provide mental health services to young people across the territory, the current system is clearly inadequate and is failing to meet the needs of Nunavut's children and youth.
The report is exhaustive. More than 400 individual interviews went into the creation of it, and over half of those interviews were with Nunavut youth. The result? 15 recommendations spanning from providing more mental health services in schools to making sure that aftercare is provided following suicide attempts.
Each of the recommendations in the report is aimed at improving the unacceptable state of mental health services for children and youth in Nunavut.
One of the things the Youth Office found unacceptable? They have to remind the government of Nunavut to follow recommendations they've already agreed to. It points out that the Department of Health still hasn't followed major recommendations from the 2015 coroner report into suicide.
That much of what we heard during our review has been said before, and that some of the recommendations that we have been made before. However, until children and youth in Nunavut are able to access the mental health services that they need, they have a right to, in their own territory, we will continue to urge the government of Nunavut to implement these recommendations.
This report will be presented to Nunavut's Legislative Assembly later in the year. In the report, it says that 91% of Nunavummiut surveyed say that the mental health services available to youth are not adequate. It appears that everyone knows this isn't enough. And with Nunavut having Canada's youngest and fastest growing population, the challenge is even greater. Kent Driscoll, APTN National News, Iqaluit.
The Government of Canada has exonerated Chief Poundmaker, who they convicted of treason back in 1885. That's after the break. But first, here's a look at what's coming up on Nation to Nation after the news.
Hello, I'm Todd Lamoran, and here's what's coming up on Nation to Nation. Remember when a young Mi'kmaq woman told off Prime Minister Trudeau at a House of Commons event, telling him large corporations are raping the land? She drops by her Ottawa studio to say that was just the start of her land activist career. As well, we all know how high the cost of food is in Nunavut. A program called Nutrition North was supposed to fix that. Researchers at the University of Toronto studied how well it was doing that, and one of them tells me the result is that food insecurity has just gotten worse. That's all coming up right after the national news.
To the east coast, we've got 7 rain in St. John's, 12 and cloudy in Halifax. Kuujjuaq is 6 with some rain, 10 and clear skies in Nain. Val-d'Or, 17 in sunshine. Sunil is 14 as is Gasp. 23 in Toronto, 21 and sunshine in Ottawa. Sioux Lookout is rainy and 13 degrees. Kapuskasing is sunny and 17. 8 in rain for Puckatawagan and Thompson, 17 with a mix of sun and cloud in Gauze Lake. 14s for Gimli and Winnipeg and rain. 19 in rain in Dauphin. 22 in cloudy and Swift Current and Saskatoon. 21 in rain in North Battleford. 10 in Sunshine in Uranium City, 9 and sunny in Stony Rapids.
Welcome back. In 1885, Chief Poundmaker was charged with treason and jailed. Today, the Prime Minister traveled to Poundmaker First Nation in Saskatchewan to make a formal apology. APTN's Priscilla Wolfe has the story.
The descendants of Chief Poundmaker and dignitaries gathered to witness the formal apology and exoneration of the peacekeeping leader on the Poundmaker First Nation.
If we are to join the Poundmaker Cree Nation on the path of reconciliation, we need to acknowledge the past and build a foundation for healing and renewed understanding. And so, as an important symbol for our desire to revitalize our relationship with the Poundmaker Cree Nation, I am here today on behalf of the Government of Canada to confirm without reservation that Chief Poundmaker is fully exonerated of any crime or wrongdoing.
After 134 years, the official apology and exoneration helped rewrite history and build a foundation for a new relationship with the Canadian government.
We all know the story about the man who sat beside the trail too long. Then it grew over. He could never find his way again. We can never forget what has happened, but we cannot go back, and nor can we sit beside the trail. Petakwahanda Biwin's dying and last words.
Poundmaker member and descendant of Chief Poundmaker says bearing witness will hopefully help future generations.
In one word, justice. This is what justice looks like. It's nothing to do with really the big reconciliation piece. It has everything to do with vindicating my ancestor, Poundmaker, and raising the level of consciousness among the youth that live here.
This historic day is at the site where the new Poundmaker Museum sits and where Chief Poundmaker is buried. Priscilla Wolfe, APTN National News, on the Poundmaker First Nation.
A demonstrator disrupted Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's speech at a fundraising event yesterday in Vancouver.
Leader and you're a liar.
I'm thanking you.
You say you want to write indigenous
Thank you for
rights?
highlighting that. And I want to highlight as
We
well.
say no. No means no, right? That pipeline's like, how dare you build, put 400 tankers through this body of water?
Okay.
Right?
Labrador land protectors are...
Another crazy
I'm not going anywhere. You know, he can continue illegally constructing this pipeline. I will always be here. You know, I'll do whatever it takes to protect our ladders, our waters, your family, your children, my children, his children too. Climate leaders don't build pipelines.
Labrador land protectors are back in court, charged with breaching an injunction to stay away from the Muskrat Falls hydro project. The activists say they were protecting the land, but the provincially owned corporation building the dam says they were breaking the law. Angel Moore brings us this story from Goose Bay.
As the case winds down, 3 land protectors were the last to testify. 15 protectors in total face charges of breaching an injunction. This stems from an event in October 2016 when they occupied the office of Nalcor for 3 days in resistance to the corporation's hydroelectric dam. Lawyer Mark Grucci says there was a lot of confusion and people did not know about the injunction.
What's been consistent is even the police themselves, when they attended on people who were already on the site for days at that point, they themselves admitted they didn't know who knew what or who had seen what.
Grucci says a person has to be informed and understand an injunction.
I think there's notice issues. Now, what the legal impact of that is and the final analysis of the facts and the arguments is up to the court, obviously. But yes, I'll be referencing that in my argument for sure.
Kirk Lethbridge testified that people don't choose to fight on the front lines and risk going to jail without valid reasons.
And so there are no criminals amongst the activists in Labrador, the warriors in Labrador. We're not criminals. We're driven by our heart and not by greed or money or other motivation.
For almost 30 years, Lethbridge has been fighting against Muskrat Falls. He hopes the case will be thrown out of court.
Possibly the judge will see now that that maybe he acted a little too swiftly putting an injunction on people that we're not just a bunch of radicals and criminals, but actually people who are very loving and caring towards the environment that they live in.
Marjorie Flowers served 10 days in jail after the office occupation. She says she could not stand idly by, even if it meant going up against a powerful corporation.
And I knew that going in, I felt I had this destitute feeling going in, and I still have this destitute feeling of being so oppressed and on the losing end of this stick.
Dennis Burden says he's devoting his life to this cause, and people need to start protecting the earth, not corporations.
I took all of this action was to get the message out there, but people didn't know what was going on here. They thought this was the greatest thing since sliced bread. But
court will continue Friday, although the judge says he will need more time to come to a decision. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Goose Bay, Labrador.
A high school in Northern Ontario has parted ways with an outdated name and logo. With a student population that is 2/3 Indigenous, the Sioux North High School recently celebrated its grand opening. Our reporter Willow Fiddler was there.
This high school in Sioux was opened in the early 50s, not long after Queen Elizabeth was coronated. So it seemed appropriate at the time to name the school after Her Majesty. But that was almost 70 years ago, and now a new school has opened its doors and its perspectives. Raina Foster is a former student and graduate of Queen Elizabeth District High School. She says it came down to choosing between 3 names.
One was controversial because it had the acronym LSD High School. Like that wouldn't fit, right?
The other options were Sioux District High School and True North High School, but neither seemed right to Foster.
I actually coined Sioux North because it was a combination of both of those names together, and everyone was in agreement.
The school board's director of education said they also updated their naming policy.
Because we knew that moving from the name before Queen Elizabeth II, which is not, there's nothing wrong with the name, but it comes from a different time, a different place, and represents something different.
And then there was the matter of the logo. The school principal said it was clear students wanted it changed too.
For one, the Ojibwe people don't wear war bonnets. It's more of a plains Cree. It's more significant to that area of people. And when we were going through the logos, the Northern Compass was very, we just knew that it was the one because of what Sioux North and what Sioux Lookout in general represents. We are the hub of the North.
There's about 500 students at Sioux North. 70% are Indigenous, and half of them come from surrounding First Nations.
So I think knowing who our kids are and where they come from allows us to design a program around them.
Part of that program includes mandatory Indigenous curriculum. Monteith said despite recent changes to the province's Indigenous curriculum, Sioux North is doing things their way. Education Minister Lisa Thompson was at the grand opening.
What was important for the minister to hear today was that this school is actually implementing mandatory, it's taken that action itself. The school has taken that role. So they're making and taking action that mandates, language courses, culture, land-based teachings.
Foster is hopeful the new school will be a new beginning. She said she envisions a space for all students in Sioux Lookout to come together.
And I'm not too sure if there is an actual room like that in this school, but I feel like that this high school in general commemorates that.
Willow Fiddler, APTN National News, Sioux Lookout.
Time for another quick break, but we've got more news to come, and here's the rest of tomorrow's weather.
To northern Alberta, we've got 17 and lots of sun in Fort McMurray, 18 and rain in Grand Prairie, 16 and rain in Red Deer, 19 and rain in Edmonton, sunshine in Campbell River and Tofino, and 18 degrees, 19 and rain in Quesnel, 14 for Sandspit and Prince Rupert, and rain, 20 and sunshine in Fort Nelson. Old Crows, 19 and cloudy, as is Rock River, 24 and rain in Mayo, 22 and sunshine in Norman Wells, 12 and sunny in Wauatee, Inuvik is 19 with sunny skies, 1 and clear up in Sachs Harbor. -4 in Baker Lake, +1 in Repulse Bay and Chesterfield, lots of sun there. -4 in clear skies in Resolute, -2 in Pangertown, and 1 in Clyde River.
Welcome back. A new report finds Indigenous women are underemployed in the television and film industry, and it's getting worse. APTN's Montreal's Lindsay Richardson has this.
The Women in View 2019 on-screen report. 65 pages of data with one sobering conclusion.
Allison, you're not just going to say what, you're going to say what the hell is going on.
Indigenous women's contributions to film and TV dropped from insignificant to negligible in just 3 years.
Women of color and Indigenous women are not getting hired. If they were getting hired, those numbers would go up. This is not good enough. And as an industry, we really need to do better.
A filmmaking veteran of over 20 years, Tracy Deer is also the board chair of Women in View.
This board right now would be entirely inspired by Ganawage.
Now working on her first feature film, a coming-of-age story set during the Oka crisis, she says in all her projects she strives to showcase authentic Indigenous voices. A move she hopes will be matched on other production sets.
I never want to be the only Indigenous woman in the room. That's a lot of pressure for one, and currently there are so few of us in this industry. We need more, and the way we're going to get more is by hiring them and building that capacity, and that's always been really, really important to me.
It's the first time the on-screen report explores data about Indigenous women and women of color. Among the 24 TV shows studied over 4 seasons, Women in View found no Indigenous women working as a writer, director, or cinematographer. And while more Indigenous women are directing, overall they make up only 1% of Canada's industry players. But there's good news. Women-led projects generally have a healthier gender balance and more diversity among the team members. Summed up in one line, quote, "When Indigenous women lead, more Indigenous women work."
I know the perspective, the unique perspective that I bring, and so I value the unique and diverse perspectives that other people bring, and that's what you want, to have a good story told. You don't want everyone's perspective to be the same.
The organization's hope is to achieve gender parity or 50-50 status by 2028, although sooner would be better. Lindsay Richardson, APTN National News, Ganawage, Mohawk Territory.
That is your news for this Thursday. You can always catch up on what you've missed on our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Have a great night and stick around now for Nation to Nation.